Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void Live. It is Friday, October the 3rd, 2025. Far Journeys is what we are going into tonight. Far Journeys is what we are wrapping up tonight. And I'm hoping to get some of these deeper questions answered where we left off. I mean, want a big shout out to Robo1776 for the $10 super chat in the YouTube. We're also live on YouTube under Lighting the Void. And then hey to April, who is a YouTube member, Joyce, and Sir Wolf. I've got Wolf in here, and also Paulina. I've got some questions. We talked a lot last night. I got to tell you, last night we talked a lot after that last chapter. Wolf, me, Bryce, Alan, all of us, you know, we talk a lot of stuff about the radio station at fringe.fm. And by the way, we are back on TalkStream Live. Thankful to be back on TalkStream Live. Bill and Tom doing great work over there, TalkStream Live, and also the Paranormal Radio app. So we much appreciated that we're back on there. Also back on TuneIn and Zeno, and trying to get everything back up. They did assign the station a number, so if you could listen to the radio station, if your internet ever goes out, you could just call a number and listen to it on the phone. Pretty interesting. But we talked a lot last night about just the deep questions that we have, and I come to the understanding that this character, AA, was actually Robert Monroe. So it circled all the way back to when Robert Monroe was first lifted out of body, out of his bed. So the big question tonight is, I would think, is do we clearly understand what happened in this book, Far Journeys? And if we don't, there's a reason why. I think a big reason why. I try to listen to this book once a year, and there's parts of the story that I miss, and I think it's because when you actually explore consciousness, like really explore consciousness without drugs or anything like that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with drugs, but I'm just saying without drugs or anything of that nature, it can get really crazy. And obviously Robert Monroe's experience is really crazy. So we have to be under the impression that he answered his own question as to who lifted him out of the bed the first time he had that out-of-body experience, or the first helpers that were lifting him out of bed. And he's named them towards the end of this book. So we are in the epilogue, and maybe we'll get some questions answered. In the live show production room in Discord, I have my good friends, Flying Bryce and the Wolf. Is it cool if I just call you the Wolf, like off of Pulp Fiction? Will that work?
You can do that if you want.
The Wolf. He's like, oh, man, you call him the Wolf? Remember that in Pulp Fiction? That's all you had to say. Yeah, you're the rescue guy, man. And for all of you guys listening on the radio station, God bless you. We've got some people in the house. We've got Canada, people in California and Texas. We've got people in Alabama, New York, and a few people in England, too. Also, real quick, before we get started, if you're listening on the station and you're listening on TuneIn, I don't know why, but I think it has to do with licensing or something, but for some reason, TuneIn, like, stops it out. So you could just go to fringe.fm or just listen on TalkStream Live or the Paranormal Radio app if you have any of those issues, or just come over here on YouTube if you're only concerned about this radio show. So in the epilogue, I think Robert Monroe is going to give us some answers. I hope so, man. What's up, Paul from Newcastle? How's it going? Robo1776 says, I got the view that Monroe regretted being human, and the last chapter, his adjustment to living in the physical works was a disappointment. I don't know about that, but I did get the impression that he got some kind of message about the process of individuation. So anyways, I think we need to just get started. By the way, this is tough for me. For one reason only. If you really want to get more listeners to your show and stuff like that, the worst thing to do is read to them. Did you know that? I mean, I've got a ton of broadcasting books that tell me the worst thing to do is read to them. They don't want you to read to them. Tell them what you think. But I like reading these books, and I like taking this adventure with you, and I'm not so much concerned about building a channel as of yet. We got to take this journey first, you and I. It's just you and I. What's up, Bryce? How's it going, buddy?
What's going on? What's going on, man?
Good, nothing.
It's a good nap. I'll tell you that.
You took a good nap? You enjoying your vacation?
Yeah, I took a good nap. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Well, I think we need to keep our eye on 3i Atlas. It is somewhere around Mars at this time. And the funny thing is everybody and their brother is trying to jump on board or get a piece of it because now The Martian is free on YouTube. So let's keep our eye on this son bitch, see what's going on, see what happens. I don't think it's aliens, but we're still going to give it a watch. All right, epilogue. Let's go. So with the calm that settled over me, I began to sort out and run the various rotes tossed to me, which I had simply tucked away for future reference. I did this not only to check what I may have missed, but to lay the pattern down tightly, on the premise that someone, somewhere, as an individual or group, might seriously investigate the material under the guise of philosophical or pathological, educational, or some other study. As before, if the following helps just one individual achieve a profound understanding of who and what he is, then the purpose has been served. I hear a lot of people say that. I wonder how many people are actually telling the truth. Man, if I could just help one person, then I've done my job. It's kind of a cliche thing, isn't it? People say that a lot. Running a rote is much like trying to recall the memory of an event out of the past. The difference rests in the immediate clarity of every detail once the unrolling process begins. Best results appear to be obtained if one is in a relaxed state and isolated. It's important to remain completely awake physically with your left brain consciousness in the driver's seat. Then simply think of the ident or the subject of the rote and wait. You can write down notes or dictate into a tape recorder as you attempt to convert the information into written or spoken words. If you feel you might have missed something, you can reset and start again, either at the beginning or at any given serial point in the information or experience. You can hit a mental pause button, maybe, if the phone rings, although this often requires a complete rework back to the relaxation state if you get interrupted. However, the rote will still be there, open, at the point you left it. This takes time and patience, thus the need for isolation. So I guess right here he's talking about how to get a download or run a rote, or possibly, let's say, for instance, like you have memories of your life before you came to Earth, or any of your out-of-body experiences or stuff that you've done. I guess what he's trying to say is those are like programs that kind of stay with you, buried in your unconscious. And if you get into a relaxed enough state and focus on it, you might be able to learn how to do it, learn how to run these rotes, so to speak, I guess, if you have enough practice. The early results came out in the following form, not very tight, but perhaps more cogent. This one's called Cruising the Rings. The first inner layer or ring was clear and more distinct from my non-physical perspective, and all seemed to be completely focused on the activities of the inhuman physical condition. Any attempts to communicate or divert their attention were met with total unawareness at the least, and the most bewilderment, fear, or outright hostility. All were attempting to participate in physical life in one way or another with no success whatsoever. All seemed to have the common characteristic. Hold on a second. Either a plane is just about to crash outside of my house, or it's flying incredibly low. Has that ever happened to y'all? You, Wolf? Like this thing sounded like a jet just flew over the trees. You think I should go check it out?
Drone?
No, it wasn't a drone. It was a plane.
Oh, it was a plane. I mean, I've had military helicopters fly just over the treetops over my house.
This was a plane. Like I wish I had a sound effect for it. Well, we'll see what happens. That was crazy sounding, man. Anyways, okay, all seem to have one common characteristic. They were completely unaware of any existence other than the physical. Only throughout repeated observation at first hand was it possible to generally sort out and classify such near-Earth humans into some semblance of order. The Dreamers. Now, this group, the Dreamers, has a distinctive vibration or radiation that indicates they are attached to a physical body somewhere in the current Earth-time space. This infers but does not verify that they may be in an out-of-body state during sleep. They apparently are attempting to continue the activity they've been performing during their physical waking hours or those they desire or fantasize. Some are simply going through the motions, and others are trying to talk with those they know who are physically awake, or eating, drinking, working, playing, trying to perform sexual acts, acting out MIDI-like roles in the middle of Manhattan, all without fruition, all with few exceptions, without any recognition of similar activities around them. What might be loosely termed evidence of their origin is that they suddenly wink out or disappear in the middle of an action, or they awakening in the physical again out of sleep. Or are they? That's a question. Are they awakening in the physical again out of sleep when they wink out? Dream analysts may be on the right track, but with the wrong perspective. The locked-ins. So that was the Dreamers. Remember, he's talking about the rings, so we're going through the rings of consciousness. These are the next one are called the locked-ins. Now, these are very similar to the previous category and might be confused with them initially, but for several key differences. This group is composed solely of those who have permanently exited their current physical body, exited their physical body, dead physically, but they don't know it. These are called the locked-ins. Consequently, they are trying constantly to continue a physical existence to which they have become habituated. They often remain around physical locations, such as houses, and physically living persons to whom they have become attached. Some continue to attempt re-entry into their dead physical bodies and to reactivate them, even into the grave, which may be given credence to the strange radiation effects sometimes perceived in cemeteries. That might explain a lot of the, paranormal activity that happens in cemeteries too, The anguish that these locked-ins must go through as they witness the cremation of their physical remains is certainly something to ponder. As with the Dreamers, this group is totally and compulsively bonded to time-space materiality. Moreover, they appear to be deep into enveloping emotionally based fears and drives which they attempt to act out but never conclude. And as a group, they are the major blockage in the flow of the human learning experience. Until they are reached and assisted, or some glimmer of awareness occurs, they remain in this locked-in state for years, perhaps centuries. Their numbers increase constantly and will continue to do so as long as the physical human values that generate the condition remain unchanged. I got to tell you, brother, that don't you think that's terrifying to me? You guys ever seen that movie? You've seen the movie Waking Life, haven't you? Where the guy's like, stuck in this like lucid dream and he can't get out and he's like, shit. And even towards the end of it, he's like, man, I think I might be dead or something, like I don't understand what the hell's going on. And here's Robert Monroe saying that these locked-ins, like they can stay there for centuries. Yeah, I mean, I know time and space aren't the same thing possibly there, but to me that just sounds horrible. Right there. Right there is one reason alone to just practice conscious exploration, to become aware of this, because if this is real, you definitely don't want to be one of those dudes, What were you saying, Bryce?
I was going to say, if you're in a locked in state, you're perceiving time in a linear fashion anyway. So yeah, you might miss a lot, who knows?
Well, this is also, I think, one of the main reasons why, we need to live our physical lives. Life is just as important as the metaphysical. You got to do both. But to be so locked into your physical life and physicality, to be so apathetic towards spirituality or what happens after you die, I worry about those people. I mean, I can't do nothing about it because I don't want to be like the religious people that are trying to convert people all the time. But when I ask people, I'm like, man, what do you think happens after you die? And they go, I don't think about it. It's pointless. There's nothing I can do to control it, so I don't think about it. Okay, I get that. Of course there's nothing you can do about it to control it. I don't mean fear about it and obsess over it. What I mean is what do you think? And if they're just blanked out or they don't even toss it up in their brain, not one iota, then there's a possibility, if Robert Monroe's right about these locked-ins, that they're going to become one of them some bitches. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want that for anybody. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Well, there might be like one person I wish that on, you know.
Right? It could be a kind of penance, couldn't it? You know, a kind of penance for somebody who's lived a really kind of evil
piece
life.
of shit, right? And you're just like, you get to stay locked in for like centuries, and you won't even know you're dead, and no one will talk to you, and you get to watch yourself be buried, and no one's going to respond to you. It's going to be like the freaking Twilight Zone, you know?
Yeah, I mean.
I was going to say, wouldn't that be like the movie Jacob's Ladder, where you just end up doing it to yourself, though? Nobody's actually making you do that.
Yeah.
So you have to realize that's what's going on. You know, if you've gone into materialism so deep in your physical life that you think that that's all that is, maybe you will get stuck like that. You know, who knows?
People are obsessed. And remember, he said people are obsessed with, they spend either most of their energy, especially unconsciously, trying to survive and trying to have sex. That's the two basic energies that people spend most of their energy on, you know, survival, sexual encounters. And if it's not those two, then it's usually like depression, unless you're medicated, you know, then you're just existing, which half of us are, right? So like, I just don't want to be a locked in. The rest I can handle, don't want to be a locked in. Remember, the locked ins are the dead people that I guess just don't know they're dead, or they're obsessed trying to stay with the physical, you know. But here's the thing. Could there be like a romantic side to that? Because I'm a romantic. Could somebody be like so in love that they're like, look, I'm not going to leave this woman or man side, whoever it is, until they're dead. I'm going to stay right here beside them, you know. Because my grandmother used to say she would wake up in the middle of the night and see my grandpa sitting at the edge of her bed. She would swear on everything. I saw him, Joseph. You know, I saw him, and he was sitting there at the edge of the bed, and he was just watching me. And he said, everything's going to be okay. Because after my grandpa died, my grandmother didn't date anybody. You know, that was like the love of her life. So
yeah, I think that's a thing. You know, I think that they're just going to watch the people that they love, and they're kind of bound by them, you know, and maybe they always exist. Maybe if you die, you always exist here in somebody else's memory until there's no memories left. So the people that forget you, and then you're gone, you know, maybe you're a kind of guardian, a kind of watcher, a kind of bound by love, or whatever that might be.
Yeah. Be a long time. I mean, maybe it's not that long in that world, you know. I'll stay here with, like, maybe my grandpa's like, look, I'll stay here with her for another 40 something years, and I'll be right here when she gets out of body waiting, you know, and then we'll figure out the rest together. That's kind of a romantic idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't get to talk to my grandpa, so I don't really know what he believes. All right. The next group are the wild ones. Much lesser in number than the above, much lesser in number than the dreamers or the locked-ins, but with the same motivating drives expressed in an entirely different manner. The reason is a slight shift in awareness. The wild ones do not realize they have lost the use of their physical bodies, and they do not perceive anything other than the physical matter or reality. However, they are very much aware that they are somehow different. They don't understand the whys or hows of it and have no desire to learn. All they realize is that such differences release them from all of the restraints, obligations, and commitments that were a part of their physical lives. They construe this as absolute freedom and attempt to express themselves accordingly in the only way they know of, through replicas of physical activity. Thus, their efforts to participate in physical human life, which they perceive as taking place all around them, take on many bizarre forms. The previously reported visit to the human sexual pile is a sample. There are implications that whenever human physical consciousness in waking form becomes, quote, loose, or shaky for whatever reason, it might provide an opportunity for one of these to piggyback or just piggyback off of someone or something just for the experience. The frequency of such incidents is known from my present perspective. Oh, dude, I just had a creepy feeling, bro. Like the hairs. Okay, dude, I wish you could. My camera's not good enough, but the hairs on my arms are standing up, man. Do you remember that story I was telling you guys when I was getting down with my girlfriend in that hotel room and we both saw this entity walk in? I told you guys that story. See, I used to think that happened because I had some kind of spiritual connection with this girl, you know? But what if it was just one of these freaking wild ones? It's like, oh, these people are about to get down. Let me see if I can pick up on it or piggyback, you know?
Yeah, maybe they pick up on the loosh. Maybe they can harvest a little bit of it.
Yeah. Probably what the hell it was. Hopefully, that's so creepy. That's even creepier, man. Hopefully, very few, they can get mean. They can even get mean at times. There was much to be learned from these inner rings, most of it was the hard way if your perspective is still heavily encased in human time-space illusions. It's pointless to recount the many attempted contacts with the inhabitants therein. You can do it yourself without bothering to enter the out-of-body state. Interview and observe a cross-section group of humans now living in a large city. The resulting data will be a restrained version and much easier to handle. The source of such preoccupation in every case seems to be extreme distortions of the original survival imprint. Evidently, there are methods by which rescues are achieved individually and on a relatively large scale, and the process is ongoing. I personally have been involved in only one or two that I can remember, and I'm not particularly proud of my efforts. I did learn one or two minor items. First, awareness of the cacophony of discordant, undirected radiation engendered by human thought, identified as M-band noise, which is my label for it, which is that noise he's talking about. And second, how to close down my perception to bring it to tolerable levels. The necessity syndrome again. It's a nice trick to have, even in the physical waking state. The next ring outward is fairly straightforward. So we're at the second ring of consciousness. So the first ring of consciousness apparently is made up of dreamers, locked-ins, and wild ones. I know I'm trying to formulate this in my head. And I wouldn't think about it like Saturn, maybe more like an onion of consciousness with rings that go out, right? The next ring outward is fairly straightforward. It is composed of those who do realize they are no longer in physical human life, but have no awareness or memory of any other possibility. And often they're stunned by the loss and do more than remain in motionless, non-perceiving passive states as if waiting for something to take place. They are usually easy to contact, instruct, and lead to a suitable outer ring. The population here is small, relatively, and remains more or less static due to the assistance supplied by the outer rings. Moving outward, the next ring is the largest of all, and it contains an apparently limitless number of sub-rings. However, they all come under a strong general category. At least, all residents here know they have passed through physical death. There may be vagueness and differing beliefs as to what and where they are at this point, and hence often sharply delineated sub-rings. With this ring, approximately through the center, there exists what might be labeled a null point of a different variety, yet quite perceivable from an external perspective. It is generated by the existence of two symbolized energy fields overlapping and exerting near equal pressure influence, without interaction between the two. So there are no standing waves set up by frequencies beating against each other, for the two fields are not compatible. That. You know what that sounds like? That to me sounds like the abyss that Crowley talks about. Like a conscious abyss, you know? The analogy of a bar magnet with positive and negative fields meeting at the center of the bar does not apply. It would be better to picture a gravity field exerting attraction in one direction and the action of a sitcom on a television in another. On the inner side of such null point, the dominant force is the HTSI, short for human time-space illusion, strongest at the innermost sub-rings and lessening inversely throughout the entire ring until it is quite insignificant on the outer edge. On the outer side of the ring, the dominant force is NPR, or non-physical reality, which is as general as one can get if there's no accurate translation available for the little that is known of it. A mirror image in field strength, the NPR effect is greatest at the outermost edge, diminishing slowly to the null point, then exponentially to the inner edge of the ring. The pattern of human passage through this particular ring is most fascinating. Again, from the external view, it is composed of energy in human experimental form moving in two directions, both inward and outward. The inward flow is composed of fresh energy from the NPR area first encountering the HTSI field, becoming more and more attracted by it through a series of inhuman existences, passing through this particular ring more rapidly once the null point is crossed. So you got these conscious beings that are coming into the physical form, or maybe they're just not necessarily coming to life, but they're attracted to it, so it's pulling them in. And then from that point inward, the movement accelerates to the inner edge of the ring and through it, terminating usually in the lowest of the inner rings. The outward flow, after release from or skirting the innermost ring, commences the haphazard seeming yet meticulous path through this largest of rings. For some, the passage is relatively direct, but a few inhuman physical existences to provide the impetus. Others, the great majority, require up to several hundred in human lifetimes and thousands of Earth year cycles to complete the process. The reason for this wide discrepancy is not obvious to me. However, one characteristic of the more direct route appears to be the careful selection of inhuman life experiences, plus accomplishments in the face of what might be termed statistically impossible odds. The two routes both emerge at the outer edge of the ring and lead to the outermost ring. That does sound like the abyss, like where the, kind of like in the Kabbalah where the, what do you call it? The Ein Sof, or the nothingness starts to like funnel into the somethingness kind of thing, you know? So you got souls, I guess you could call them souls. Let's just call them energies. One leaving and others coming in, you know, but there's like this abyss point where these fields are pushing apart. And you know how he's talking about, well, one looks just like energy. Think about that. One just looks like energy, and the other one actually looks like a television sitcom or series. Now, I'm not trying to make everything about magic and the occult, but if you really, really studied the Kabbalah and you studied the middle pillar specifically, you have the earth, you have Yesod, Tifereth, and then you have the abyss, right? Or Da'ath, which is kind of what he's talking about maybe. And then you have Kether. Well, at the top of the Kabbalistic tree, it's nothing but energies, right? It isn't till, matter of fact, I'll show this to you. I'm not saying that there's any correlation. It's just, to me, it makes kind of a lot of sense. All right. So let me pull my little drawing stick out here and get out of studio mode. All right. So like here, I don't want to use that color. Let me use black. So here's kind of like the line, and everything above here is just energies, creative whirling energies that start to manifest, and things don't actually imprint. And remember, Crowley said one place looks like frequency gravitational waves, and then the other side of the null point looks like a television sitcom. Well, right here, or we could just say in this area, is where things start to imprint in the Kabbalah. So you get it like a metaphysical blueprint of what something's supposed to look like, or seem like, sound like. And then it doesn't take physical form till it gets here. This is some scribbly stuff, I know. I'm hoping am I making sense, Wolf, at all?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that he's talking about exactly what the Kabbalah said. That's not what I'm saying. It just seems like pretty coincidental to me, again, you know, that they're kind of, I've always known, like they're kind of saying the same things, except one's more fantastical, like fantasizing, making religious stuff out of it, and the other one's studying it more scientifically. And I think that they're saying the same things, you know. Okay. So
the Kabbalah, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but the Kabbalah does talk about the layers of consciousness in a way too.
Yeah.
You know, so it could, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that there's a little correlation there.
Yeah. When I hear him talking about how all these conscious rings and stuff and how things come into existence, remember, like all these rabbis from back in the day that were, how they designed the tree and stuff, they didn't just think in their head like, oh, I'm going to make a ring here and this is what it looks like and I'm making all this up. They did exactly what the Monroe Institute is doing, except in like a religious sense of the word. So they used prayer and angels and stuff like that, but they also used meditation. And they would go deep into trance states and meditation and experience these things. Just like there was another person in the Explorer series talking, what did he say? There was like 7 rings, 7 circles, or 49 rings and 49 circles. So they were perceiving these rings in a sense too. And a friend of mine wrote Kabbalah of the 50 gates, which is like 49 rings plus one more. But I don't know. I think there's something to it if you got a mix of like a hodgepodge of people talking about it and they're all kind of saying the same things but in different stories, Anyways, let's get to the outermost ring. So the single outermost ring is composed solely of those who are preparing for their final inhuman experience, the last timers or seniors, whichever suits your perspective. They've lost their gray appearance and much of their humanoid form. They're nearly white in radiation, with occasional sparkling patterns around them. They are tightly closed and do not respond to any communication attempts except possibly among themselves. It's difficult to observe their final reentry into human experience. It's either too rapid or too instantaneous. Their exit from the final cycle is represented by a sparkling, glowing light which moves rapidly outward through the rings, with occasional pauses for some unknown reason. And upon passing this outermost ring, they suddenly disappear from perception, leaving no residual image or trace. In some respects, the entire process resembles crudely the cycle of an innocent coping with an addictive drug or chemical such as alcohol. The first taste is scarcely palatable, but the effect is interesting, something new. When the opportunity arises, the neophyte takes 2 drinks just to see if the effect is enhanced, and it is. Uncontrolled, the pattern is all too familiar all the way down to Skid Row. Now, nothing's more important to the wino, and nothing occupies his thinking other than where the next shot is coming from or his next hit of drugs is coming from. Near total amnesia is common, and more significantly, a lack of desire to change. He's forgotten who he is and could care less. Reclamation and remembering is a slow and sometimes painful charade. And once achieved, however, the innocent has transformed into a state of being far different from the original first taster. Where the analogy does not match is in human life experience sequence, the change is permanent. In serial form, the itinerary of human experience might be mapped something like this. And he's got this map. I'm going to see if I can show it to you guys. Which, I got to figure this out. Hold on, let me figure this out. I wish they wouldn't do that. Like when don't put stuff in the books that I have to show on freaking video, man. I hate it. Because now I got to figure all this stuff out. This right here lets you know that I don't prep for shows whatsoever. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right, I'm going to zoom in until you guys can see this on YouTube. Bing, bing, bing. So there's an inward flow, entry, exit, intermediate area, the non-physical reality, first timers that come into this human physical time, full spectrum. And there's like these, what is this? Ambience field, the outermost ring, ambience field, and the major ring. I think you guys probably, I don't want to go through all this, so you guys got to get the book to check all this out. But if you want to see all the semantics of it, just get the book or the PDF, and you see there's an inward and outward flow of souls and idents and ideas and consciousnesses, stuff like that. There's no way in hell I could convey all this to you guys, either on radio or whatever. Just ain't happening. Okay. Back to it. All right. So another way to describe the process in contemporary terms is the unit or the original you, who you really are, is attracted and drawn by the human Earth energy field. The unit decided to make a close-in pass through the field to obtain data information. So you were just this unit that got curious about this energy field called Earth, or whatever. Life. And this reduces velocity in the unit to a degree greater than that calculated to occur from friction, and due to the unexpected adherence factor of the particles within the field. The reduction is so great as to fall below escape velocity, and the unit moves inexorably into an elliptical orbit. So if you get close here, long story short, if you get close enough, you get kind of sucked in anyways. You remember when they were kind of telling the story, don't get too close, it's addicting, you know, all that stuff in the book. So at each apogee of the orbit, the unit passes through the human Earth energy field again and again and gathers additional adhering particles therefrom, causing greater reduction in velocity, which in turn lowers the perigee of the orbit. And finally, the orbit breaks down and succumbs to the now more powerful attraction of the field, and the unit settles into the field itself to become part of it. To launch and achieve escape velocity, to get out of the human experience, unit must, 1, remove the adhering particles that created the problem while retaining such information, data, experience as to bring back something of value. So you got to shed all the junk. 2, develop and store sufficient energy to achieve both launch and escape velocity, which infers a far greater amount than the available at the point of original entry under typical conditions, plus additional reserves to compensate for the extra payload on board. The solution is made complex by the lack of efficient methods for the proper detoxification and removal of adhered particles, as well as the availability of only the most primitive techniques for proper energy distillation and accumulation. Therefore, at best, extraction is a long and arduous process. The key is to begin first with ballistic trajectories followed by elliptical orbiting, ever increasing the perigee until escape velocity is reached. Sounds to me like when they were talking about like alchemy, how it's an energetic thing too, like your consciousness isn't just you meditating. It just isn't just you doing rituals. There's an actual energetic transformation that needs to take place inside you also as you increase in consciousness to shed off all the shit that's got you locked into physical existence, and also so that you can, what do you call it in alchemy? Well, basically you just detox and then come back together a bit more perfect, or more you, right? More authentically you, I guess you could say. Therefore, the unit can return to its original base with its payload or with its increased energy and move on to greater exploration. The foregoing is at best a generalization specific only in the broad classifications indicated. It is a simplification of a very complex and intricate pattern of movements perceived from an external perspective. It is deliberately devoid of as much as humanism as is possible by a human, in the belief that such starkness will gather the attention and understanding latent in the left brain modality. However, the problem still remains, the need to express in a form remotely acceptable to inhuman consciousness. This, then, is a flow sheet of where the action is in which all of us are vitally involved. It could be identified as the Earth-human energy environment, human time-space illusion. It is a summary based upon several hundred individual explorations, most of which are beyond literal translation. To chronicle each individually would consume an entire volume in itself, if indeed it were possible. Therefore, this baseline will have to serve for the moment. We might get lost with or without it, but our chances are better with it. So, I honestly, I don't know about you, Bryce and Wolf, but I would have loved to read the Robert Monroe Black books. I want, even if nothing happens, let's say you get out of body and you just fall on the floor and get back in. I don't care, man. I want to read, I'm weird like that. I want to read every experience, every piece of data you got. Would you guys want to do that? I would.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering about that last night. Does something like that even exist? That's what.
Like his notebooks or something?
Yeah.
He's got to have a secret stash somewhere. He's got to have it.
Damn. What's up, Word Salad? Somebody. It'd be crazy if somebody actually had his notebook stashed or something, you know. All right, so he has this rote or a program or understanding called BHP1, Compressed Learning Category Human. The first point in consideration of human structure certainly should be the note that a small percentage have never been through the experience prior to the present sojourn in time. Some may have had physical life experiences in other parts of time-space and in other physical forms, but this is their first run as a human. Other first-timers have never been in a physical form of any sort. Time, space, physical matter, and especially human existence on Earth is an interesting anomaly. It has some peculiar qualities that are unique in the development of intelligence and consciousness. As a result, human life has many attractions. To some, it's like attending a vast amusement park with a multitude of different types of exciting rides to try, a playground where standard rules that are non-earthly are suspended for a moment. I think I'm one of those people. They desire human existence simply out of curiosity. They have received a rote on this interesting state and want to find out what it is to be part of it. Many, having observed the state at a particular point in human history, decide it's an ideal opportunity to try an experiment conceived in their period of contemplation. The peculiarity of human existence at a given point in evolution provides an opportunity to try out the idea. Still others find that the limitations imposed by physical incarceration, the people that always say, it's a prison planet, those, as a human, also engender concentration of certain energies available only in that state. This is the only point available to apply such energies. By far the greatest motivation, surpassing the sum of all others, is the result. When you encounter and perceive a graduate, your only goal is to be one yourself once you realize it is possible. To be one what? A graduate? Is that what he's talking about? When you encounter and perceive a graduate, your only goal is... Okay, so when you encounter someone like let's say Jesus or Daskalos or a graduate maybe, your goal is to be one of those. And it is. Thus we go to the physical because of what it is, an intense learning process, a school of a very unusual sort. It has the implication that an important part of that learning process is to force the admixture of two different types of energy modulations. One enters as male and the other as a female. The drives, needs, enculturation, and other factors all may be designed to literally force the accommodation, melding, and understanding between these two systems of consciousness. Alpha, and religion calls this Alpha and Omega. The mysteries call this Jachin and Boaz. Right. The conditions of entering physical life as a human are relatively strict. It is as if detailed agreement is entered into, like you made an agreement before you got here. First, the energy form must agree that time-space truly does exist. Without this agreement, it is impossible to have primary human consciousness. The energy form must agree that there is a time, such as the 1980s or any other time frame by Earth reckoning. It must be agreed also that there is truly a planet Earth designed and created in the form that it is. It must further agree that consciousness expressed as a human has certain characteristics and limitations. The blanking or sublimation of previous experiences is a part of the process, the amnesia. This is to assure that there will be a minimum of interferences in the performance as a human caused by previous life patterns, physical and in other realities. Bear in mind that this is all at the conscious perceiving level. It's not removed from the essence of the energy from accepting the agreement. Such experience will remain with the newly human energy form in a non-conscious state. This is important because such experiences or purpose may well be the underlying motive, that is, the driving force behind the performance of such energy in human existence. Once a decision or agreement has been reached, a propitious, what is this word? Propitious? A propitious and probable birth entry point is selected, taking into consideration the genetic, environmental, social, political, and economic elements that may not absolutely ensure the realization of the purpose for such entry. And many times, due to the possibility that all factors may not be appropriate and suitable, Some entries are made simply on the possibility or hope that the goals can be achieved. And often, there are so many variables present that in turn presents a most enticing challenge to simply just try to beat the odds, as it were, or change them by thought and action. Some people make it, and some don't. Another factor is that the demand or need for selective new points of entry far exceeds the supply. Thus, many may get tired of waiting, as it were, and will accept entry under the most marginal of circumstances. Yeah, so if you had to choose or pick an entry point, like, I always wondered if people say, man, you choose your life or whatever, right? You choose your life before you get here. You choose your parents and all that stuff. What's up, Delina? I'm thinking, did I for real? Or did I just say, hey, man, put me in, like Fiji. I want to be born with these parents. Give me the perfect body. And then I got tired of waiting. And I said, you know what? There's a spot in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yeah, I'm going to be kind of chubby, but damn, what a face and voice. And my parents are kind of cool. How long do I have to wait for that Fiji one? Nah, I'll just go now. Boom. And then here I go. Boom, Arkansas. Is that how it works? Is that what he's saying? Or am I like interpreting this all wrong? It is a marginal circumstance,
Yeah, but it's like the whole time, linear time thing, That's what's got me puzzled right now.
No,
like how
you
far
just have to consciously accept that there is linear time.
Okay.
Because if you could choose, I guess it just depends on what you're wanting to experience, And what do you get to know? Like, are you going to know the genetics? Are you going to know, I know that he's explaining this stuff and there's probably no way to tell all the details, but I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I got tired of waiting, I don't know about you guys, but I know you want to say something. I can hear you pausing to talk. Step on me, damn it.
I was going to say, there's supposed to be more people alive now than ever.
That's true.
So where do they come from if they're constantly generating and the size is getting more than these spots that they're waiting for? Do you know what I mean? It's not like reincarnation, but why is there so much more now than before?
Maybe we're about to get to that energy vortex.
Yeah,
and people just want to be on Earth when it happens. You know what I mean? They're like,
the great show on Earth.
I'll take, I don't know, Uganda or something, like a third world country. I don't want to miss this. You know what I mean? Well, what about... Don't want to miss
3i Atlas.
Yeah, and what about when do we, I don't want to get into a religious concept or a political one here, but I am curious, when do we actually become conscious in the body, right? Is it at birth? Is it in the belly? Is it a few years after? Because some babies don't make it very far. They only make it a few months,
Yeah.
So what do they just recycle and they're like, damn, and I guess that one didn't work out. Just put me in another one, or something like that. Who knows, right?
They sometimes people have these memories of past lives, particularly in India, and people that have been killed in the war, and they're able to find relatives and the plane they crashed in and blah blah blah, and then that memory that they have, apparently they lose it as they get a bit older, as they become older, like 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is. But they get wiped eventually by the looks of it.
If people get tired of waiting, as it were, and will accept entry under the most marginal circumstances, how does that work when you're in a place where serial time doesn't exist? What does waiting even mean?
Yeah, good point.
Is there time, or maybe there's no time until you get close to the rings, and then you're like, damn, I feel like I'm waiting, and I don't even know what that means, I don't know. You got an idea? Was you about to say an idea, Wolf? Because
No. I'm as lost as you.
I don't know. Okay. A review of the learning process and the absorption of information by a first-timer will provide a beginning overview Upon entry or birth, the first-timer is surprised and shocked at the very severe constraints of the physical body. It can no longer move freely and easily as mere thought or desire. It used to move as fast as thought. Now it's stuck in a physical body. That's why when babies come out, they're like, "Wah!" And they're all like balled up and their fists are doing all this stuff. They're like, what is this shit? So thus much of the early weeks of existence as a human are taken up with conscious and frustrating efforts to obtain control of this new physical body. Simultaneously, it is overwhelmed by astounding demands for nourishment, a process that was an automatic function in previous existence. Add to that a massive battery of strong and chaotic signals pouring in from sensory sources never before perceived, the 5 physical senses, and one begins to get a better appreciation of the traumatic state that is undergone. There are indications that the effect would much be more severe were it not for the reinforcement received by the first-timer during non-conscious periods, or sleep, from interested and concerned observers left behind in the reality outside of time-space. Yeah, like being born, especially for a first-timer, hell, I could be a first-timer, I don't know, but being born has to be way more traumatic than death, I would think, because death could just be like, okay. Oh, and then as soon as you die, you start kind of remembering everything, maybe, if you're conscious enough. But being born, that's got to be a trip. It's like waking up to what the what's going on, Let's see. From this beginning emerges the primary learning system that continues throughout human life. It is the focusing of conscious awareness. Pain or pleasure, as reported by the 5 physical senses, turns attention to the event being experienced, and such experience is the learned and stored. Further, if the element of emotion is involved, the storage process is enhanced greatly. Physical experience of an extreme nature also deepens the learning process. Simply stated, the depth of learning, or retention and recall, is in direct relation to the intensity of the experience. Conversely, the more shallow the experience, the lesser the attention, which diminishes greatly the learning experience. So is that why women like so much drama? Because it's more interesting and fun? I didn't just say that out loud. Maybe they're more conscious than us, and they know that the intensity and the drama and the craziness will make them remember it more. Or just, maybe not just women, or just dramatic people, more emotional people. Right. And if you're just a boring, shallow person that only thinks about like just physical stuff, and you're shallow is pretty boring, then you're not going to remember it anyways. It's just going to pass, and you won't even store it in your non-physical memory banks. Primary learning is the database upon which we humans principally conduct our physical lives. Other learning processes affect our thoughts and actions. Yet the fundamental pattern of performance is based upon the primary learning. Secondary learning, another pattern which is present throughout human existence, takes place beyond what we call our level of consciousness. This is data received through our 5 physical senses in those areas where attention is not focused. This takes place during waking physical life and is stored and retained in the most minute detail. I knew it. I've always known that. Due to the lack of attention, less than 20% of such secondary learning is ordinarily available for recall by the human conscious mind. Still, this entire spectrum of memory is called upon unknowingly by the individual as the need arises. It colors and affects our thoughts, decisions, and actions, and we are quite unaware of it. You get what he's saying there? So, we have this thing called the unconscious. Our consciousness focuses on, like, if I look at this bottle cap, my consciousness is focused on this bottle cap, or I'm having an experience with this bottle cap. That's one form of learning. But our unconscious, this machine of consciousness, is taking in everything that I see around it in minute detail, mapping it out, like everything that I'm feeling but not aware of it physically, and it stores it somewhere. Right, like a program does when it takes in information, I'd say like a massive AI program that's constantly running in the background. And this is why when we surround ourselves with negativity or constant bullshit, our unconscious takes it in, maps it out for us, puts it back in our reality, and then we think it's like some kind of curse or something. Yet, I don't know, it's still taking it in. I gotta stay off social media. Like all the way off of it. A third form,
Yeah, like-
you know what I mean? Like it's mapping all that stuff, dude. It's taking it in, even if you're not focused on it.
Yeah, like a feedback loop.
Yeah, and that could be the reason why also that the etheric double, like if it's just like this reality, because this reality is so freaking mapped out. You know? What if our brain does take in all this stuff? Even if we got bad memories, but there's this like storage drive somewhere that maps everything that we unknowingly, we just don't know that it's doing it. And it stores it in the metaphysical cloud, so to speak. And it can just remap everything. Like that's all we are, is these walking freaking smart TVs taking in data, you know, and spitting it back out. Kind of seems that way. A third form of learning, there's another one, occurs during our cyclic non-conscious state or sleep. At our waking conscious level, we remember very little of such activity, though it becomes deeply embedded in and becomes a part of the memory experience system upon which we base our life activity. Culturally, we have been trained to place the least importance upon those events we do not remember and rarely recognize the influence these have upon our activities or experience. We examine from an external point of observation. Automatic use of this learning process becomes quite visible. The principal learning system, devised by the various cultures in human history, is the most widespread and accepted, yet the most unnatural. For the greatest part, it ignores completely the in-place and operating primary and secondary learning processes. Thus, it's very artificially, without natural means of focusing attention, requires a form of dedication and discipline generally unavailable to the average human conscious mind. Attention flickers, fluctuates, especially in low order, repetitive experience, denigrating much of the learning that might take place. Crude as it may be, such learning methods are held in high esteem in human existence, and virtually all of it revolves around the knowledge, understanding, and control and application of physical matter, including the energy systems so generated therein. Most vital, this dominant yet artificial and limited system of learning operates entirely through input from the 5 physical senses. And because of this foundation, it has the effect of eliminating any last vestiges of origin identity remaining in the individual. This is at once the heart of the problem and the major challenge to the naive energy form. As the first-timer lives his human life, he finds virtually nothing to guide his mentation and directions other than those directly related to time, space, physical matter. Unfortunately for the human, this includes those organizations who purvey belief systems based upon individuals both present and past in history whose knowledge of origin identity was operational during their human sojourn. In the retelling and conversion to verbal human communication, plus the erosion of many retranslations, only portions of the process remain. And sadly, such portions attempt to teach effects rather than causes. Only in very rare instances do these provide clear access to the source. Therefore, as the first-timer moves through human physical life, he picks up and absorbs many unsuspected attachments. The most powerful of these are emotional, or rather distortions thereof, which relate solely to expression only in time-space reality. These reach such magnitude as to be virtually impossible to achieve and experience in a single physical human lifetime. The results are a compulsive need to re-enter and recycle to complete that which had begun. This is where we get the idea of karma from, to perform the purpose for which there had not been time to repay imagined so-called debts, and the list becomes endless. In short, the problem can be stated very succinctly, which turns a first-timer into a repeater. Human physical life is addictive. There are 2 overwhelming factors that engender such addiction or decay of orbit, as you prefer. But the two together and interweave them tightly, and it becomes easy to perceive just how difficult the human compressed learning system can be, especially for the unaware and uninformed. This may in itself be part of the training. Any attempts to describe the methods are near incomprehensible to those who have never been human, just as it is extremely difficult to explain postgraduate status to a human first-timer. The 2 factors involved are the survival drive distortion and prime energy diffusion. These two factors are overwhelming, and they engender such addiction or decay of orbit. So, coming up, I guess we're going to talk about what does he mean by the survival drive distortion and prime energy diffusion. No idea. We're going to find out, though. We'll be right back. I got Wolf, Flying Bryce, and Alan here in the production kind of, let's just say, in the Discord studio. Hit us up in chat. Call or leave a voicemail, too. We'll play it back on the show. Also live on the Fringe FM sometimes at 501-777-5631. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
One in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by the all-new Polaroid Roach Motel, the amazing new product that catches all the roaches in your home and gives you glossy wallet-sized photos of them in just 60 seconds.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. you'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by St. Tabby's Aspirin for Cats. The first fish-flavored aspirin made especially for the aches and pains of frazzled feline.
The following program is very, very sick.
Okay, all right. Having a bit of a hard time conveying some of this information, but it is super interesting. The info is super interesting, to say the least. All right. Wolf, Bryce, Flying Bryce, and Alan's here with me. God, thank God someone's here to keep me sane. And the chat as well. We're live on the Fringe FM. It is Friday, October the 3rd, 2025. And we're trying to finish off our Journeys by Robert Monroe. Obviously, we can't interview Robert Monroe because he is no longer with us. But I've heard some of his interviews, and I didn't get any of this information in these interviews. He's had a couple of really good interviews on Art Bell, and I believe there's one on YouTube as well of with him and his old producer guy. That's actually, Sudi put it in the Discord, and it's a really, really good interview. You guys should check that out. Let's see. That's a good question, Robo. So who is the next Robert Monroe out of the times? I have no idea. I haven't met anybody that thinks and explores consciousness the way Monroe does. I would say Thomas Campbell could be a close, but he's got a theory that kind of negates some of what Monroe's talking about, but also goes along with it, you know. Anyways, you guys want to say anything before we start this next journey in the Bryce, Wolf? Any questions?
Nope. Any
precursors of any kind? Because it's going to get weirder. Take that as a negative. All right, so
the questions come with the reading.
Human compressed learning. Okay, so the human compressed learning system. Why does he call it compressed? Can be especially difficult for the unaware and uninformed. This may in itself be part of the training. Any attempts to describe the methods are near incomprehensible to those who have never been human, just as it is extremely difficult to explain postgraduate status to a human first-timer. The two factors involved are survival, drive distortions, and prime energy diffusion. I love how Robert makes up names for stuff he could probably simply explain, but let's go through it. The survival drive distortion, like animals, plants, and other organic life, physical man is heavily imprinted at birth with the will to continue to grow and live, to survive, and this is expressed in two basic ways: body protection and maintenance. The first demand is the acquisition and consumption of food and water. This is followed by pressure to keep the body suitably warm or cool. Next comes the need to keep it safe from predation, ranging from predation. I guess that's being ate. Predation, is that what that means? Predators? The next is to keep it safe from predators ranging from other humans and carnivorous animals through insects and down to the smallest virus. The fight or flight dilemma arises when two or more of such needs come into direct conflict as to priority. Nothing controversial in that, so what's the problem? Well, most humans spend most of their waking hours taking care of these matters, one way or another. There's no choice in the matter. You're in the top 0.0001% of the human pyramid if you know without question these needs will be met tomorrow, the next week, or the rest of your life by your own action, your family, or your government, your, quote, government. There's also nothing new in the massive distortions that begin to occur beyond the basic needs. Storage of food or other assets just in case there may be a change in the future. Endless varieties of food aimed not so much at nutrition as at taste and aesthetics. Special food preparation and services as well. So entertainment foods in the form of alcohol, drugs, tobacco, etc. And back around the cycle to foods that are good for you but to keep you healthy. Clothes that not only keep you warm but are made correctly, of a desirable color or texture, made for a variety of occasions and, of course, in rapidly changing style. Shelter that goes far beyond the hut in the hills, larger and or in a desirable location, equipped and re-equipped with newer furnishings, facilities, decorations, and all catering to individual taste and current style primarily, far secondarily to comfort and overstated need. It's kind of like the Fight Club thing. We buy stuff that we don't like to impress people, or we buy stuff that we don't need to impress people we don't even like. Then we become addicted to those things. Some of these have been brought to the point where it is actually difficult to die. Extensive and expensive life support systems and institutions are an example. Keep the body alive, never mind the details. And in some civilized societies, it's a crime to take your own life. Whom will they prosecute if you're successful? That's a good question. All such extras and add-ons are stimulated and rationalized by countless inducements, few of which can stand up under intense scrutiny for validity. This is compounded by competition both to acquire and to dispense, which brings into full play the natural physical law of supply and demand. To protect these accumulated items, to serve the body, which is you, locks on doors, fences around houses, doors and gates, laws and rules, medicines and drugs, guns, police officers and prowl cars, lawyers, doctors, nostrums ad nauseum, cities and nations, banks, armies, and atom bombs. Within this distortion lies the adhesive that binds the heavy particles to the energy form, which all begin with early agrarian cultures and tribes, intense overkill by the survival drive, all physical. Nothing else is important. It had to happen, free will being what it is. Next is sexuality or reproduction. The most powerful of the survival drive imprints takes precedence over all others, and therefore has been subject to more major distortions than any other. The greatest among these has been and is the illusion that as a creative act, it thus engenders automatically the creative emotion of love, ethereal and godlike. The results are attachments and commitments that are both irrational and restrictive, which not only distort severely any current physical life goals, but continue beyond illusory burdens of guilt, obligations, and a vast number of related memory patterns too potent to release. I'd like to hear Robert Monroe read that one to his wife. Wouldn't you? Because here's the truth. Finally, I think Wolf was right about Robert Monroe. But does he have a point? I'm not moving on until you guys respond to this. Does he have a point? Is it intrusive? I can tell you for sure that I'm not afraid to say it, that every sexual relationship that I've ever been in has messed with my life goals. Period. And everything I see on YouTube is somebody giving not just YouTube, but social media, is somebody giving a sermon on how to never let that person mess with your life goals again. And yet people do it to themselves. I mean, I'm not crazy here. And I don't think Robert is crazy, but I would still like to hear him read this to his wife. The results are attachments and commitments that are both irrational and restrictive, which not only distort severely any current physical life goals, but continue beyond illusory burdens of guilt, obligations, and a vast number of related memory patterns too potent to release. I mean, if his wife had I'm just going to say, if she had the survival instinct that he's talking about, she probably went along with it because, he was paying the bills, ironically enough.
Well, there's relationships that, I mean, it can happen that way, but it can also happen the way that relationships, you can actually synergize each other, and one person can help guide the other person toward their goals. I don't know. I've heard testimonies, but I haven't lived them, so I don't really know.
I mean, I've lived them where they kind of say that that's what they're going to be for you, then it turns into something else. But yeah, like that. I think that this is a projection from Robert right here, but he could be right, I mean, but most of the people that I've heard talk about, let's just say we can wrap up this little paragraph right here that he said, most of the people that I've heard talk about relationships or sexual commitments and that sense of the word are usually not very happy people at all. Very I don't ever see them chasing their life goals or anything. And then when they do, but that's a whole other story. All right. So with few exceptions, it is doubtful if it has ever been otherwise with the male. Knowing this, all right, hold on. I'm getting some noise in the production room for some reason. If there's background noise, try to like mute it. With few exceptions, it is doubtful if it has ever have been otherwise with the male. So was he just talking about females there? Knowing this, the female with a propensity for perception has taken this manipulative advantage to broad extremes through hundreds of years of cultural evolution. Those females who succumb to the illusion of permanency have no choice but to lie back and take what is coming. Simply put, one fuck doesn't make a future. A baby, maybe. This is a side of Robert Monroe I do not remember. Do you remember this, Wolf?
No, not at all.
Am I reading Robert Monroe's book here?
It's all coming out now.
It's all, yeah. You can't put the whatever back in the bottle. It's out. Yeah. Those females who succumb to the illusion of permanency have no choice but to lie back and take what is coming. Simply put, one fuck doesn't make a future. Thank God we're on the Fringe FM, we can say that. It does make a baby, maybe. And with increased objective knowledge of the influential power of the reproductive survival drive, the lures and blandishments thereto are used blatantly and consistently to distort even further the high sensory entertainment factor of the act itself, carefully omitting the slightest reference to its original purpose. Those using such enticements to irrationally range from the individual through major industries to governments themselves. The result is a cacophony of distortions, all aimed at increasing reproductive act desires and need, and the amplification of the problem without providing a sensible solution, all of which only add strongly to the glue that binds the human in low orbit. So what basically Robert Monroe is saying here is he probably asked his wife for an open relationship several times, and her delusions and distortions wouldn't allow it, so therefore he acted it out in the out-of-body experience.
100%. 100%. Because earlier on he talked about beyond illusory burdens of guilt.
Yeah, he's just like, he was a little too honest there. Okay, so that, in a nutshell, was what he calls what did he call it? The survival drive distortion field that keeps us here. The second one is called prime energy diffusion. Now, consider what we call emotion in all forms to be unknowing expressions of our prime energy drive, or the creative force inherent in each of us. There are no exceptions. Included are joy, sadness, anger, happiness, hate, friendship, nostalgia, possessiveness, loyalty, ego, greed, guilt, fun, worry, anxiety, among others. And a few not ordinarily regarded as such, like curiosity, ideas, equality, hope, loneliness, and of course, love in a non-ordinary connotation. In this context, emotion is the key to and the driving force underlying every thought and action in human existence. The concept of unemotionalism is an illusion. Even the most extreme objectivity covers carefully an emotional agenda. So everybody that talks about emotions, nope, emotions are bad, and nope, I just got to control my emotions, or I don't have any, unless they're just douse themselves with Prozac, is an illusion. They're under a delusion. They have an emotional agenda somewhere down there. Rationality and emotion go hand in hand when traced back to the source. If a human being is the product of a creative force, then being human is totally an emotional expression of such energy. There has not been a single major act in human history that has not been driven and or inspired by emotion. Astute politicians now recognize that voters emotionally elect presidents. That simple facts and figures contain emotional coloration. That's why there's two colors. All great leaders throughout mankind's existence have had emotional appeal as their source of power. Motivation is an interim statement of emotion. And many studies, authoritative books, and hundreds of millions of dollars have been dedicated to the application of this concept during recent years, all apparently backing away politely from the fundamental source of the phenomenon through either ignorance or rejection. The result is a chaotic mixture of unchecked and misdirected energy that is and has been the human experience. Isolated attempts are made to act and think without emotion, which is an impossibility. Even in the laboratory, it is slowly being determined that any experiment is affected by the observer, inadvertently, unconsciously, and unobtrusively. Thus, absolute replication can occur only under identical ambience. Again, an impossibility considering the flickering thought-emotion patterns of the observer-experimenter. For a simple test, try recording each and every thought and emotion you have expressed during the past 1 minute. Then attempt the same recall for a minute 1 hour ago. Now at the individual level, the generalization becomes specific. In every moment of existence, we are a seething brew of emotional responses to both internal and external stimuli. Awake or asleep, the ever-changing mosaic of flowing energy continues to surge at assorted amplitudes and frequencies. We place value judgments on each and every portion as determined by our own experience and impressed upon by the culture in which we now exist. When the two conflict, we usually choose the latter as a sop to expedience. Thus, we attempt to let full expression of the good emit from us and try to suppress and repress the evil and hide it from view. That's a little Jungian, Freudian and Jungian stuff there, huh? And for the vast majority of us, this is the extent of our efforts to control this mighty and most vital energy that is our true heritage. At best, we are only partially successful using an incorrect standard of measurement. We make decisions in blind anger and resent the results. We hope and become disappointed. We laugh in joy and become depressed when the moment fades. We hate when a person, place, or thing does not fit or meet our concept of what it ought to be. We think we love and break our hearts, and quotations love, and break our hearts when we discover it just isn't so. We were mistaken. The list is endless, and we keep trying because we can't help ourselves and we don't know any better. We ride the waves of our emotions through the peaks and the valleys until some of us become cynics, neatly neglecting the obvious, that cynicism is itself an emotion. The mess gets messier when we do perceive that effective and achieving left-brain decisions are made ultimately by some emotional factor, hidden and disguised as it may be. This propounds the old can't live with it, can't live without it syndrome. And free will is no longer free and hasn't much will at all, buried under a swarm of emotional encumbrances. By far, the largest accumulated heavy load is the emotional mass loosely held as the human ego. Originally a probable sprout from the survival imprint, but it requires and consumes constantly immense amounts of reinforcing emotional patterns, all of which are by their very nature distorted and distorting. Ego exploits the concept that it is needed to exist and achieve, that the emotion of confidence cannot exist without ego support, that happiness is satiated ego or satiated ego. Ego can bring forth hundreds of irrational emotional reasons to justify its existence, sidestepping the fact that emotion and irrationality are not synonymous. It steadfastly maintains that there would be no human personality were it not for the ego. And at least the ego is correct in one premise. The human is an emotional being, period. It's simply a question of utilization or of application. The epoxy that locks the whole heavy load onto the unit and makes orbit decay inevitable. The heavy preponderance of such emotions are directly related or attached to time, space, physical matter, earth events, things, and relationships. As such, they are not applicable. I can't say that word, applicable nor can they exist in any reality other than their point of origin. There is one exception. It is the only clear and accurate representation of the original prime energy and cannot be generated at will. It is a synthesis of other emotional thought and action brought into expression and thenceforth indestructible. Most important, it is not peculiar to the time-space continuum, and the existence of it is not contingent upon such environments, and as such, it is not part of the load factor. Instead, it is the source of power to obtain and lift off and reach orbit and establish the escape velocity. Now, let me tell you what I think he just said there. You cannot get off this earth, time, space, addiction cycle without harnessing the power of your emotions. You cannot, and I have definitely experienced this in a magical context, you cannot manifest your deepest dreams and desires without emotion. So when anybody tells you that, when they start talking like emotions are bad, emotions are this, it is, and it always has been, at least in my opinion, this is where I agree with Robert Monroe, like bullshit. It is just as much a part of you as your own breath. And to deny them and to deny it or to repress it is only going to make your life suck. And possibly, according to Monroe, if he's right, your metaphysical existence even harder. So don't repress it. The major.
I think that has a lot. I think that has a lot to do with that right brain aspect, and we're in a culture that does repress that a lot.
Yeah, and you got
in
this
country.
MGTOW dudes on YouTube and Facebook trying to say that they're actually alpha guys and they're strong, and they're not strong at all. They're physically strong and trying to keep all of their life left-brained, and yet they can't. Most of those coaches and people that talk about that stuff, most of them couldn't hold down an intimate relationship for more than 6 months. And the reason is because they're faking. Those MGTOW dudes are the biggest fakers on the inside than anybody. They really are. Even the Stoics. I'll say even the Stoics. Not saying Marcus Aurelius wasn't a badass dude. He was. But I don't think he was going around teaching it in the way that, like, say, the Tates and some of these, like, alpha coaches are, right? I think they're full of shit, and I don't think they're strong at all. I think real strength is just being yourself from the very beginning, both mentally, left brain, intellectually, and emotionally, right brained. Because authentic people, especially women, can smell that shit like, or anybody, let's just say dudes, women, if you fake at all who you are, it's going to come out later in the relationship, whether it's intimately or with your friends, and then you're going to have a problem. So not only are you not creating your reality, you're just being fake because you're just repressing this stuff all the time, you know. There's a balance to all of it, though, I think. So the major, if not the only, reasons for attending the Human Experience School are, first, to learn to translate such energy into a discernible form, and second, to become a first-order generator thereof. Now, this is no easy task if you don't know what it is, if you don't know how to express it, and if you can't knowingly generate it. How does a person learn to sing if he's never heard a song? Doesn't know of words or melody and pitch. Worse, if he doesn't know that he even has vocal cords or even a voice. Clues may lie in the common mislabeling and misconstruing of emotions akin to, but definitely not the same. So to avoid confusion, call it super love, or SL. Knowing the difference is the key, as the ident love has been used so broadly, in other words, we throw that word around, as to have lost any significant meaning. Try this crude overlay for starters. Super love, or SL, is indestructible, as stated. Once activated, no subsequent thought, emotion, or event can have any effect upon it. Super love, SL, is not in any way dependent upon manifestation in physical matter or activity therein. SL, super love, has no object, animate or inanimate, although much may be one of the catalysts to trigger the generation thereof. SL, or super love, is a continuous radiation totally non-dependent upon like reception or any other form of return whatsoever. Super love is a very complex and rugged curriculum, this human school of compressed learning. Paris Island at its peak was a tea time social by comparison. There at least you had a reasonably clear idea of what you were doing and your probable destination. Now, knowing this, it was worth it. My very deeply dedicated response. Among the few seniors and graduates I have encountered consciously, there was not one who would not repeat the inhuman learning system again and again, no matter how many times, knowing the indescribably magnificent result. My fleeting glimpses support totally this perspective. Cool. pretty cool. I kind of agree with him on that. I kind of agree with him on most of it, except for like maybe. I think maybe Robert Monroe might have projected his own. I mean, he could be right, but I think he might have projected his own sexual stuff into this thing a little bit. Like the mass of that pile of sexual people, like he's putting it on like he observed this effect of all these people in this like sexual parasitic thing, and he tried to rescue one of them. And maybe that's what it was. Or maybe that was what was in his mind, and he saw it. I think you kind of talked to me about that, Wolf, before. You're like, maybe he's projecting some of this stuff. And the more...
Yeah, man, he could well be projecting it. But earlier on when he was talking about emotions, to me it looked like he was kind of saying almost that emotions can drive you, and that it's almost like a get out of jail card, you know?
Yeah, if you harness it properly, yeah.
Yeah, if you know yourself and learn to control lust and anger and this and that, then you are out of control. But it seemed to me he was almost giving it a pass, like, oh, if he cheats on the astral, it's not really his fault. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, when you feel an emotion, just like it, I always tell people this too, like, and you could figure this out on your own. Like, if you can't repress food or you'll die. You can't repress air or you'll die. Emotions are that much of a part of you. So if you feel anger, there's a proper way to process it and release your anger. You know, it doesn't mean you go around punching people and beating the shit out of everybody or hurting people. But you could, you know, yell into your pillow, punch a punching bag, you know, roll the windows up in your car and scream, shit like that, right? Same thing if you're sad. People they just suck up their tears and, you know, but you got to let it all out somewhere, or it's just going to stay in there and just fester. Not only that, once you start learning to process every emotion in a way that really doesn't hurt other people, right? Once you learn to process it that way, you really start to become balanced. And I think if there wasn't all of this like societal bullshit about emotions, I don't think there would be near as many like SSRIs and, you know, all of these psychological diagnoses. What are they saying? Like 1 in 5 people now have mental issues. Well, it's not, I don't think it has anything to do with their brains. It has everything to do with the repressed shit, you know, and the cataclysmic chaos of the internet now, you know? So
yeah, 100%.
Just you shouldn't look at the logic in your head any greater or worse than the emotions. And you just got to learn how to, and I'm not saying that I've done it, perfected it at all, but there's something I've learned over the years, you know. Okay, so next we're going to talk about preparation and liftoff. I don't know if he's talking about like liftoff out of the earth thing or actually getting out of body, but I guess we're going to figure that out. So here's what might be euphemistically called a crib sheet for the course, presumably offered with the knowledge and consent of the instructors. And like all such aids, it doesn't give all the answers, and there's no guarantee as to its accuracy. But the best can be said, it is that it was hurriedly copied from the instructor's manual with their permission and cooperation. Distorted and poorly filtered as it may be, perhaps this cup of murky water is indeed better than none at all to the parched and thirsty runner. At least it's water, and it may help cross the finish line jogging lightly and happily. So he calls this detoxification, load reduction, and purging. The design calls for a continuation and expansion of physical life activity in all forms, physical, mental, and emotional. There's no inference that a lessening or retreat must occur, as this will extend the process rather than shorten it. The change lies in the perception, control, and redirection of the energy forms that are you, just as coherent light produces far more effectiveness results as a laser. Now, start with these fundamentals as a baseline. Remember, 1, reality is what is perceived. A participant in time-space, you perceive it, and it is a reality to you. If you have not perceived any other energy systems, they are not real to you. However, you must consider that you have done so, but they are not within your present awareness. It then becomes simply a matter of remembering. 2, energy does not exist until expressed. We are expressions of energy. The energy that we transform or generate has no reality until we express it. An idea has no reality until we transmit it or put it into practice. Knowledge and information are nothing without dissemination and or application. A single thought is not real unless it is instilled into or acted upon another or is acted upon itself. Think and do is the operating productive combination, either mentally or physically, and one or more energy systems. Inhibit, restrain, or block the flow of any such energy and it ceases to exist. 3. Energy focused is exponential. Now, just as a lens can concentrate solar radiation to a temperature many times greater than normal, so other energies can be transformed and modified. This is particularly valid with the energy spectrum available to human consciousness. The fact that we exercise them randomly and unknowingly for the most part, specifically in the non-physical categories, does not invalidate such potential. 4. Consciousness is focused energy. In particular, human consciousness is widely focused into time, space, physical matter. This is not the totality of energy consciousness involved, as other forms of the same consciousness are active concurrently in divergent systems of reality. 2 inferences may be drawn from such multiplicity. 1, the human aspect can be adjusted and focused to much more concentrated points, offering potentials of power and action too immense and unfathomable to be considered lightly. And 2nd, the other non-human forms of the same energy system might be drawn upon it if need arises. Now, with the above tucked away, it's possible to get to the hands-on phase. Although the following notes are presented in a sequential manner, it is quite appropriate to refer to any portion that may serve a given need. There is no fixed pattern or order common to all of the human learning experience. An event early in the life exercise of one may surface years later in another, if at all. So everybody's in a state of like awareness and learning. It doesn't mean like you're growing because you learned this and, oh, I learned that when I was 20. Well, some people don't learn stuff until they're the same thing until they're 50, 60, or at a different lifetime. Okay, 5, establishing grazing principles. Instead of actively seeking out needed changes, deal with each as it appears in your daily life. Live and be just as you have until you perceive an emotion or attachment that is so obvious you can't ignore it. 6, live a 24-hour day. Become aware of what you do and think at all times and all activities, and examine the emotional factors that appear to be the strongest. That attract your attention. Especially, examine the emotional factors that appear to be the strongest that attract your attention. Include your sleep periods with their nonverbal communication dream content. Explore these by asking yourself, why repeating the probe until you reach each source? Explore these by asking yourself why. Just ask why, basically. Figure it out. Don't stop until you figure it out. It is then easy to detach and release the energy for other purposes. Start with the small and work into the large. 7, begin ego diet regimen. A frontal attack on this most entrenched and concentrated center of distorted emotion is contradicted as not feasible. Much too many lose the battle. Most never begin it. The trick is to start a cutoff of the emotional power feeds that are vital to its existence. Modify and redirect the energy therein. So cut off this stuff to your ego only. Bear in mind that you are bombarded constantly with ego gratification ploys aimed at modification of your behavior for the benefit of others. Does that make sense what he just said? Bear in mind that you are bombarded constantly with ego gratification ploys aimed at modification of your behavior for the benefit of others. So when people placate towards your ego, they're not doing it to make you feel good. 99% of the time, they're doing it for their own reasons. And people that are smart know how to manipulate your ego. The problem is in your emotional response, not in the blandishment itself and the consequential acts you perform. If you want to drive a luxury car simply because you enjoy doing it, that's fine. If it makes you feel more important or you like to be seen driving it, if you have to put my in front of the identification, you found an ego power feed. Keep this perspective and apply it when the need arises and act accordingly. The second source of ego emotional power feeds is eternally generated. It is generally accepted that ambition and the drive for achievement are primarily ego gratifying processes. To determine if this is valid or such motivation comes from a more profound origin, conduct this test. So, and when you're trying to achieve something, is it to feed your ego or is it for something deeper and I guess more aptly put for the energy, for consciousness? Who knows? Let's see. Let's run this test. Now, first, will these needs be happily met if you in no way receive any public or private credit for your success? Question mark. Are they absolutely essential to your physical survival? If the answer is affirmative to both, you're further along than you realize. Even with fame, fortune, and adulation, your load will actually lighten. If both come out negative, start unplugging the feed by asking why. At a point in your unplugging process, you will find glimmers of prime energy radiation which provide any justification you may desire. The more emotional energy you so release, the greater such energy you will perceive. Next is the divest survival sex ties. Here we go. Due to the need to protect and maintain until physical maturity the offspring of the reproductive act, many cultures have attached certain obligations thereto. While this is generally a purely physical requisite, many have taken the position or inference that far more is involved. The reproductive act is first and foremost a very powerful response to purely sensual stimuli. The response is not in itself an emotion, although the depth of the experience often causes fantasizing that is exactly that and of much greater import. To confuse the issue further, sexual union is one of the significant ways to express this super love we previously discussed, this emotion found in the prime energy. The load reducer is to understand the difference. There is no right or wrong engendered either way, only difference. Recognize that from the perspective of solely a physical act, any emotional attachments thereto relate only to time-space reality. As a procreative act, it is physical, it's just natural for that. Unless other energy patterns emerge as a result, enjoy it, but don't get hooked on it. You don't need to take it with you, because there's better in the original form. What you experience here in physical reality sexually is a very weak imitation of a part of a totality. No male or female owes the other person an obligation to copulate. Sexual attraction and attractiveness are elements of a survival drive which is purely physical and no more. Yet these are enough to alter drastically individual life patterns. Load is induced when more is made of it than it is. Sexuality is not love. If love is defined as an expression of prime energy, but may well be a procedure through which the individual eventually learns of its existence. Check that out. That's kind of cool. Sexuality itself isn't love, but the act in itself could help you learn of your own existence. If this does indeed take place, keep the love and release the sexuality. Then no load exists. All right, the next one is release value judgments. With a distortion of time-space as a baseline, it is impossible for anyone to discern accurately the quality of any thought or action. Good, evil, right, wrong exist only as an illusion. In orbit, there is no or up, down. As a point of expediency, it may be necessary to adhere to the concepts of the culture in which we exist temporarily. Without a solid overview, we cannot understand the ultimate value of what we do. Therefore, follow your own design, lighten the load by refusing to bond lasting emotion onto any physical act or the action of others. I don't know if I agree with that. There's no right, wrong, good, evil. I mean, it might be like in the metaphysical world, it's not really right or wrong. It's more of like more conscious or less conscious, All right, the next one is detach matter emotion. Physical things, places, etc. are units within time-space, to be enjoyed and to be used as tools in the learning experience. Nothing in physical existence is ours. We don't own or possess anything or any person. Nothing belongs to us. Even the matter we use for our physical bodies are borrowed, as it were. Store the memory and the experience, leave the emotion behind. Next, I've lost count, but you are your own responsibility. We like to lay this one off wherever and however we can. blame conditions and or anyone else for what we do, don't do, and are there and seem to be mistakes. Take credit when everything's great, though. As exercisers of free will, we do our own instigating. Calmly accepting the results will get you liftoff points. An old folk song with the title, Ain't Nobody's Fault But My Own, says it very well. Look it up. The next one is that free will is a fantasy. Within time-space, the very constraints thereof preclude any such theory. At physical birth, we are bound not only by our previous experience, whatever it may be, but by the genetic structure of the physical body we inhabit. From that point on, we have no choice but to be bonded into the flesh for that lifetime, long or short. We're bound to maintain and operate our physical bodies within the limitations they impose. The set and setting of our physical existence is controlled, initially at least, by others. What remains colored and modified as it is might be considered free will. Exercising this upon another only increases the load. We're trying to offload so that we can take off, remember? Offloading is accomplished by maximizing this remainder in non-physical areas and accepting without emotion the limitations so imposed. The next one is laughter is a purging process. As a direct expression of the prime energy, when in doubt, let it out. An inadvertent smile is part of the same spectrum. It's one of the best of emotions, but must be spontaneous to produce actual results. Seeing and enjoying the humor in life is something not to be missed. It relaxes, detunes the ego, and puts any event into its proper perspective. The next one is PP, or pain and pleasure, which is just a learning curve. Consider these as a waveform originating within the survival imprint, and therefore signals relating only to time, space, physical matter. Pain or pleasure, that is. They are essential tools that can be used for measurement. Think of it as a sine wave, with pain below the baseline and pleasure above it. The amplitude of each is an indicator of intensity, which can be controlled. Step 1. Sort out and remove all emotional energy adhered to your pain and pleasure accumulated memory. Step 2. Begin control of each portion of the waveform so that you can increase or decrease the amplitude at will. You are approaching escape velocity status when you can reduce your pain or pleasure waveform to a near perfect straight line. Next, maximize your sleep periods. This is the most neglected and misunderstood portion of our existence. Freed temporarily of the restrictions placed upon us by our left brain organization and the press of physical input, the sleep segment offers a great opportunity to advance in many areas. Any of the previous suggestions can be initiated and developed during the sleep state. Consistency and frequency are important. You may not get the results the first, third, or fifth time, but eventually you will succeed. Begin by stating the affirmation. I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. Therefore, I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and those who follow me. Also, I deeply desire the help and cooperation, or the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires. Say it first as words in your mind just as you are drifting off to sleep. Convert as early as possible to nonverbal communication, or NVC, stating the affirmation in mental action rather than spoken words. After you are well established with the technique, add specific needs such as information, healthcare, problem solving, communication, or any of the procedures listed previously using nonverbal communication. The answer will come usually not in words, but in pictures, sound, living action in your mind. There is no limit to the ways you can use this method provided you do not impinge upon the will of others. So this is like Robert Monroe's version of magic, that affirmation, just making sure that you don't mess with other people's will. Does that sound familiar? If you need help, ask for it by nonverbal communication. You will receive it, and perhaps not immediately, but you will, often in the most astounding, serendipitous, and synchronistic ways. Yeah, like when you ask a really deep question and you turn a radio station or a song pops on and that one verse answers your question, or somebody says something on a TV show after you flick the channel and you get the answer you were looking for, that's a synchro. Be sure that you qualify your need and that you can handle the answer or result. Another thing is measure your load-energy ratio. At physical birth, we enter physical life into a presumed innocent consciousness. The path to adulthood and your progress along it can be termed a loss of such innocence, scaled by the number of responsibilities you have willfully assumed as created by your authoritative acts. Maturity, which is not the same, is calculated by totaling the percentage of illusions you have released and discarded deliberately, not forced illusionment. Wisdom is the lightest and most valuable of payloads, and your progress along the interstate highway thereto are reflected in your willful action, mental and physical, as the result of your release of such illusions. The detoxification, load reduction, purging process can be interpreted as simply the sequence of these three: adulthood, maturity, and wisdom. So adulthood, maturity, and wisdom. You ultimately are your own instructor, and you will fill out your own report card. Next is building escape velocity energy. It will begin to generate automatically as the result of the human learning experience, more than enough to achieve a tangent to your previous orbit when you graduate. It is the understanding that the action suggested here may help in such production. Then no longer will you reflect and transform the prime energy as in the past, but create it, and of your own, and radiate it in all ways and in all forms. Call it louche, love, or whatever label you want. This fits without need of subject or object. And the last one he calls Pas de lou rone kenu. What is that? Can you say that? Wolf, are you reading this? Pas de lou rone kenus. I don't know what that means. I'll have to look it up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to look it up right now. I have to. Might as well. It's the last one on this little chapter anyways. Which means no idea. I hope you admire. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. We'll look it up later. I figured I'd just Google it and it would just pop up. Anyways, let's just read what he says. A language professor father, now in another reality, used this to wake up students in his class in French. Oh, it's French. Claiming it was an old and famous French proverb. Some worked earnestly for hours trying to solve the enigma. It may be very appropriate here, too. To find the solution, say it in your mind or vocalize it using a French accent. Listen to what you're saying. See you in home or along the way. That's what it means. See you in home or along the way. All right. The rest are like Q&As, man. I think we should just go through them real quick, so we can just be done with this thing, because I don't want to do a whole nother show on questions and answers, unless you got some. Do you agree or disagree with everything that he just said? Chat, Wolf, Bryce? I still think he's off. For some reason, I think he's still projecting, like, what's up, Ari? Didn't see you there. I think he's projecting his sexual stuff just a little still. But the rest of it makes sense to me. A mother's love can do impossible things. Wouldn't know it, but I heard that it's true. Remember Ruth Montgomery and Raymond Moody and Jane Roberts and Robert Monroe, Young, and More Talks of Consciousness. What's up, Christy Belly? And Jesus, too, yeah. We are avatars in a game. What's up, MJ? All right, question. How do you know it isn't? All right, so the out-of-body experience. Most frequently asked questions. How do you know it isn't just a type of dreaming? Good question, right? That's what everybody always says. Well, most individuals do dismiss the experience when they encounter it as nothing more than a vivid dream. At most, it may be categorized by some as what is identified as a lucid dream. In the latter, the dreamer is apparently aware that he is dreaming and he can control the content of his dream, even to the point of changing the event, the participants, and the outcome. In the out-of-body experience, the individual is near totally conscious, as our civilization defines the state. Most, if not all, of your physical sensory perception is replicated. You can see, hear, and touch the weakest. The weakest seem to be able to smell and taste. Your perspective is from a position outside your physical body, near or distant. In a near state, it is usually from a location impossible for you to be with your physical body, such as floating against the ceiling. In a far location, it could be in Paris when you know you're in New York physically. You can observe events taking place, but you cannot change or significantly affect them. You can verify the authenticity of such events subsequently if you so desire. You cannot participate to any major degree in this physical activity because you are not physical. It is the extreme reality of the out-of-body experience that sets it apart from a dream. It is as real as any physical life experience. And I don't know any other way to say it, but he's spot on there. It is not a freaking lucid dream. It is not anything like a lucid dream. It is nothing like a dream. It is the extreme reality of the out-of-body experience that sets it apart from a dream. So unless you've experienced what he's saying right there in that last sentence, I would say that you're probably just having a lucid dream. Next question. Can anyone get out of body? Several studies made during the past 10 years indicate that some 25% of adult humans remember having at least one spontaneous out-of-body experience. Many were unaware of what happened to them until the phenomenon was described to them. As stated earlier, we take the position that everyone goes into the out-of-body state during the delta or sleep state as a natural process and in varying degrees. Therefore, one step may be to begin to remember the OOB patterns you have or are performing each night when you sleep. Further, after specific psychological and or philosophic preparation, we believe that anyone can indeed consciously move into out-of-body states. Next question. Will deliberately going out of body hurt you? Could you die from it? Robert Monroe says this: after 25 years of investigation as well as personal exploration, there is no evidence to support either possibility. There's no doubt as to the emotional impact upon discovery of the reality of the out-of-body state. The major adjustment of one's belief systems is often traumatic and must be dealt with carefully. Physiologically, there seems to be no effect, including any depletion of energy. Next question. Do drugs or alcohol help or bring on an out-of-body experience? Well, there is some data to indicate that hallucinogens may be producing an uncontrolled OOB. I'd say that ketamine for sure. I've never done ketamine. It's one thing I've never done. But from hearing people talk about it, ketamine for sure replicates the type of out-of-body experiences I've had when I hear other people talk about it. The drug experience in of itself has not been studied in depth as to its possibility. Alcohol as a depressant tends to inhibit a conscious out-of-body experience, or at least the memory of it. There is some support to the concept that anesthetics are no more than chemical triggers to produce deep out-of-body states, for example, unconsciousness. Experimental slow administration of these under non-threatening conditions, as well as the medical descriptions of the various planes of anesthesia, are the basis for this premise. Next question. Is the out-of-body similar to the near-death experiences that have been written about in several recent books? Robert Monroe says this: it is very similar. More pointedly, with allowances for cultural connotation and uncontrolled action-reaction due to a high-stress ambience of the moment, they appear to be one and the same. Most, if not all, of the elements found in the near-death reports have been replicated repeatedly with various laboratory subjects using the hemisync process. The difference lies in the perception of the events and situations encountered. Without anxiety and stress, armed with objective observation, another perspective of the same state condition is forthcoming. Next question. Are such things as weather conditions, moon phases, lying north and south important in achieving the out-of-body experience? Robert Monroe says this: we have no hard data to support the premise that any of these have a significant effect on the out-of-body experience. There are a few indicators that lying in the north-south position does have some effect, which would infer that the Earth's magnetic field may have some bearing on the process. Because it was easily done, the new isolation booth in our laboratory is aligned in a magnetic north-south position. By setting up artificial magnetic fields within the booth, we will be able to equalize or produce a null magnetically, much as the astronauts experience in their moon exploration. Subsequent studies thereof should provide partial answers at least. Question: if I leave my body temporarily, can't someone else get in it when I'm gone? Robert Monroe says this: if our premise is correct, there is no more possibility of this taking place than there would be during the normal sleep, if there could be statistics worked up on such possibility. The odds against an occurrence of this sort are far greater than those of your being killed in an auto accident during the coming year. Over the past 15 years, working with laboratory subjects and program participants, there have been no incidents that remotely could be construed as, quote, possession, or something destructive or uncontrollable. Next question. In your previous book, you gave an angle method for getting out of your body, but I can't make it work for me. Is there something I'm not doing right? Robert says, well, this method described was a very early technique that worked at the time. We have since discovered the many other vital factors that are involved in the process. Also, we currently use other techniques that are easier to understand and perform. Briefly put, it's not quite as simple as envisioned earlier. Next question. What does it mean when you get strange aches and pains in your head and various parts of your body when you try to go out of body? Robert says this: generally, it infers unconscious anxieties and concerns that must be sought out and addressed before you can go on to the out-of-body state. If you're able to get behind or perceive the reason for each one at the level they exist, then release the emotion attached, these physical signals will disappear. And think about what he's saying there, too. Like, a lot of our ailments start from, I can't tell you, man, because I've had emotional like waves in my life of super intense passion and happiness that lasted for years, a few years, and then depression because something doesn't go right, and then I get depressed or whatever, you know, and then I go and seclude and try to figure it out, and then I come back again. And I can tell you, like, through those times in my life when I've been in like the depressed state, I don't know about you, but when I've been in that negative kind of depressed state, I could guarantee that I was giving myself physical ailments. Now, the doctors won't say that. Some of them will. But you just have to take notice, like, how physically happy you are when you're not, or how physically well you are when you're happy. I'm not saying bad things can't happen when you're happy, but your emotional states directly affect your body. I just know it. Like, and as to earlier when he was talking about, I used to, like, when I first got out of body, I got out easy after that first time. But then I started like having questions about stuff. Sometimes I'd get too excited, or I'd get actually all in my head. And I would have moments where like I would feel myself floating up out of my body. Like my feet would rise up, but my head would stay grounded like a rock. And then I would feel pressure in my ears, like if you were swimming underwater. Seriously, it's the weirdest thing. And my ears would pop, you know. What's up, Dan? Brother. Question: can you get back into the wrong physical body by mistake? Well, can implies the ability of such incident to take place. It can happen, as it did to me in the early days. How often is another matter. In our current civilization, there are no means to understand this possibility even on a speculative basis. It has never happened to our laboratory subjects or those who have trained with us. We use a simple homing device to ensure to return to your physical body. To return neatly and in a hurry, all you need to do is just to think of one part of your physical body, such as a big right toe. The attempt to move or wiggle it. This brings prompt results because there's no data and the wrong body incident has occurred to me. It does presume the possibility that it might happen with an untrained novice. If that is your possibility, remember the wiggle the big toe signal. It will save much fear and worry. Question: what about animals in the out-of-body state? Have you met any? Could you communicate with them? Well, the only ones recognizable to me have been domestic cats. Yeah, that happened to me too with one of my cats, which have been a part of our household family. They evidently have at least a second body, to which can be perceived if they are asleep when you're out of body and you go to investigate. Of recent interest to me during the departure phase, I encountered 3 cats just outside, sitting relaxed and observant. In greeting them, I was surprised to find they were the 3 of our favorite cats who had died physically during the past 3 years. And in retrospect, why was I surprised? I don't know. I had my Burmese snowshoe cat, Allie, attack me when I was out of body once. And I didn't really know. Like, I thought, what I thought was, like, when I rolled off the couch and I looked at her, I thought that I could see her, but she couldn't see me. But I remember her kind of like looking at me, and I was like, "Hey, Allie, what's up, baby?" And I kind of reached down to pet her when I was out of body, and she freaking lunged at me, like, rang, and lunged at me. And then the thing is I woke up thinking that, oh man, my cat could see me in the astral form. But when I woke up, she was still asleep at the edge of the couch on the table. So I think it was like her astral body, maybe. I don't know. Next question. Will your sounds on your audio cassettes or those on any other sound cassettes induce the out-of-body state? It would be very rare, if at all. Certain other factors must be approached first, such as the fear barrier, reprisal of belief systems, among others. It is the extreme exception that balance has been reached sufficiently to move that easily into the out-of-body state. Question. Well, what about flying dreams? Is that an out-of-body experience? Well, we generally recognize that the flying dream, with or without an aircraft, is a rationalization of an out-of-body experience which is unacceptable to the belief system of the conscious mind. Later data suggests that the dream of getting out of your car and performing some act falls into a similar category. Have you ever dreamed that you forgot where you parked your car? And also, the falling dream often becomes re-entry into the physical when practiced in slow motion. Question. How is remote viewing different from an out-of-body experience? Well, remote viewing, or the ability to see events taking place at another physical location, employs a trained state of consciousness that is effective while still very much within the physical body. Usually only one form of perception is utilized, which translates as visual. In the out-of-body state, there is no awareness of the physical because you are away from it. Also, perceptions other than visual are invariably present. There are other differences, but these are the basics. Next question. Can an out-of-body experience be induced by hypnosis? I think it can. There are a number of reports that this has taken place, and it may be possible. We have no direct experience with it. The weakness of this technique from our perspective lies in the fact that the out-of-body individual is not in control of the activity, which seems to be quite important in the process. Question. When you find yourself out of body while still performing a physical act such as driving a car, what should you do and how do you control it? Robert said, get back as fast as you can. Use the quick return method described earlier, like wiggle the big toe. Now, this has not happened to me personally, but I understand it does occur infrequently. Next question. Is it easier to go to a place or a person while in the out-of-body state? Usually it's easier to go to a person, easiest to someone who is close to you emotionally. There are some who can go to places, but it requires a specific address or an ident. Next question. If you meet a being while out of body, how can you tell if it's malevolent or benevolent? An unqualified reply to this one is difficult. Often what is perceived as vicious or evil is simply a very impersonal energy you have encountered which you interpret as aimed at you personally. A sudden undertow at the beach may seem frightening and deadly, and it's your fear and the unknown potential of it that makes it so. The undertow itself doesn't know you exist and cares less. Now, these can be avoided if you consciously limit your input, quote, frequency, as it were, allowing only those on your wavelength to communicate and or make contact with you. At best, if there is a question, pat it on the shoulder and tell it to go home. At worst, you can go back to the physical and regroup. Otherwise, say hello and enter into some form of communication. Next question. Can one go forward and backward in time while out of body? Very much so, because the true out-of-body state is not a time-space state or condition. It is not as productive as one would imagine, for several complex reasons. Most important is to use a strong home ident back to get back to your original start point. Such ident must include not only place, but time. Practice near time runs before tackling the long ones. Next question. What is my form while out of body? Think of your second or immediate non-physical body as much like gelatin that has been removed from a mold. It remembers the human form and thus is near identical. The longer one is separated from the physical, the weaker the memory becomes and less reinforced. Time distance also seems to be a factor. The farther away from the physical, such memory or its effectiveness becomes less. If left to its own devices, you may become a ball or a teardrop or even a small cloud or just a blob. All of this can be bypassed by slipping out of the second body immediately after separation and becoming clear, undiluted energy. You can always grow a hand and arm if you need one. That's trippy as hell. Question, what about the reincarnation process? Are physical lifetimes sequential, simultaneous? Are physical lifetimes sequential, simultaneous, or what? Well, first, they are not sequential in time. They may indeed be simultaneous. It is a question of who is doing the perceiving. I don't know if that really answers that question, but... Next question, why would super beings, as you describe, need technology? Well, they don't. Putting their activities and ability within this context appears to be one possible way for our left brain culture to begin to understand what they are doing. Such, quote, technology it's natural to them as our automatic system is to us. We don't think about our gastrointestinal tract or our circulatory system or our lungs as technology. We just use them without conscious effort. Although we now understand much of the technology involved. Their technology is much the same, relatively, except that they deliberately apply it and control it. The next question is our human technology a result of communication with such super beings? There is much to support this premise, especially when key figures and events in human history are objectively studied with this prospect as an alternative to our present belief system. I guess that's the next whatever. Next question. Do certain types of food, coffee, smoking, sugar, etc. aid or inhibit out-of-body experiences? There is no direct correlation either way, based solely upon those laboratory subjects and program participants active within the Institute. We're not aware of any reliable, in-depth studies on the matter. Moderation may be the common factor, if any. Next question. What would you say is the nature of good and evil? Well, they exist only in the mind of the perceiver due to ignorance and lack of understanding, plus an immersed viewpoint. Next question. Can one live two lives simultaneously relative to time? This question has been asked of our non-physical friends who report that it is not only possible, but does take place frequently. We have no further information about it or how or why it occurs, except that I personally was given the name and location of a second life that I'm living, but I have not had the time or the courage to verify it if possible. The next question is, Robert, has your religious beliefs changed as a result of your out-of-body activities? And he only says one thing. Yes. And then the last part of the book, which I think you guys can pretty much read for yourself, is a very long, there's like surveys and stuff at the end of the book. But the last part is a psychological examination of Robert Monroe. And this psychologist gives, I think, the out-of-body experience phenomenology. I mean, we could read this later, but pretty much the book is over. It's done. What do you think about his answers, Wolf and Bryce? Appendices. You guys dead? You asleep in there? Did I put you to sleep?
Some of it was convoluted. I mean, he has a particular way with words, doesn't he? He's a kind of a product of his era, I suppose. But
yeah, it was like 1980. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, 1980. But he's like a 1950s guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know. But some of the questions he's kind of glided over there, hasn't he? Like the good and evil thing, the nature of good and evil. Yeah,
it's a simple answer to a deep question, I think. Like, Here there's good and evil. Obviously, there is good and evil. It's just as real as anything else. I don't mean in the religious context, but there is good and bad, right? But maybe to him, is like, well, it's just a matter of awareness, or perception. Like, I don't know. I don't see how that there shouldn't be a bigger answer to that. That was a kind of a short answer. You're right.
Yeah, I think there's a lot left out, and then he maybe over accentuates other parts of it, makes it a little bit convoluted. Some of it earlier on was almost like a confession,
Which part? Are you talking about the
kind of the sex part, the kind of emotion part? It was almost like cathartic for him, his expressions. I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of it was. I think some of it was a projection. I mean, the rest of the book pretty much is like doctors and stuff, and their prognosis about Robert Monroe, their diagnosis of Robert Monroe, which if you guys are interested in that, let me know. We can do it later, but pretty much this one is over. So we've went through Journeys Out of the Body and Far Journeys. He also has surveys at the end of this book that are based upon data from the Monroe Institute, right? Like, for instance, did people say that they have a change toward a belief in life after death? 215 said yes, 109 said no, 66% said yes, And he has a ton of those questions. So I imagine back then, after people would go through the hemisync experience or whatever, or whatever they were doing back then, because I know he had one before the gateway process that was called something else, but I'm sure he did like a little questionnaire to them, just to see. So all of those statistics are in there, plus like a couple of physical doctors and a psychologist that evaluated him and all this other stuff. And then there's like an about the author thing in there, which we may do a video on later, but I think it's kind of redundant at this point. We have completed Far Journeys, and those of you that have taken this far journey with us, you guys are badasses, man. It's been a hell of a journey. We're not done yet, though. Before we start the regular radio shows and the interviews and all this stuff, I want to get as much Monroe into people as I possibly can, or at least the story and stuff, because it'll be kind of a full circle thing for me, and it gives me a good starting basis when it comes to questioning future interviewers about encounters and out-of-body experiences and stuff. I've got a couple of people that I'm starting to get lined up. They're not big names. I'm not really interested in big names. More interested in really good experiences and stories more than I am big names or well-known people, because there's a lot of like ordinary people that have had fantastic stories and learning stuff. But there's also a lot of them that are making up bullshit too. So we got to discern through all that. And I need your help with that. Help me discern. Anything else you guys want to comment before we roll out? Because this has been like the longest show we did all week, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm good, man.
A lot of my questions have been answered.
Really? Cool.
No, not really.
Not really?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Bryce. I have more questions than I have answers.
Yeah,
it's been a good ride.
There's no way the guy's not blackmailed in some sort of way. What is this? What are y'all talking about in chat? Ari's saying, I get all these goofy. Hey, I got your donation yesterday through the Stream Elements link or PayPal or something, Ari. Appreciate that. He says, I get all these goofy Charlie Kirk, AI Real, SpongeBob, George Floyd, yada yada. Someone could make some really funny Monroe vids. Yeah, it'd be nice instead of getting the same crap that we always get, right? I think he mentioned keeping religion out of the process was essential. I mean, if you're going to explore consciousness with an open mind, like taking your religious beliefs into it, there's really nothing you can do about that. I mean, if people, like, say if someone was like super Buddhist or whatever, but they did want to have an out-of-body experience, to ask them to be like, hey, man, I need you to not be Buddhist or whatever, or Jewish or whatever they are, before you have an out-of-body experience. Like, I don't think that's going to happen no matter what you want. Like, they're going to have to take that into that experience until they experience something that opens up their mind to other things or a deeper truth or whatever you want to call it, you know.
In a lot of the religious texts, though, there is kind of astral projection and levitation of monks and certain people throughout history, and it's just been sort of documented in a different way in a religious context.
Well, I've heard that the Hindus, I've read some text about that. I've also heard that I've had friends that went to India, specifically like Amalia and a couple of people that worked under some of the gurus over there, and they claim that they can get out of body and go visit people and talk with them all the time. I haven't personally experienced this, but I've heard so many claims of that stuff, you know. And then there's countless times in Christian books about it as well, you know. So
That's right.
It is pretty documented in religion. You're right.
It is. But regarding the whole last chapter or the book as a whole, if that was a movie we all just watched in the cinema and you step outside into the broad daylight, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel elated, confused?
No, well, I can tell you this. The first time I ever read Robert Monroe, listened to Journeys Out of the Body, then Far Journeys. Well, let's just say Journeys Out of the Body. I wasn't at a theater, but it was an audiobook, and it felt like I stepped out of a theater. But all I could think about was, I got to see if this is real. I have to see if this is real. That's it. That was the only thing that was on my mind. I have to see if it's real. I'm going to do everything and anything all the way till I can't do it anymore, until I figure out if this is real or if it's not. I became personally obsessed with it. Now, is that the same thing as like leaving a movie? Like if you watched Fast and Furious and then you left the theater and you're like, dude, I'm going to go get a imported race car no matter what, you know, maybe. But I never felt so passionate about finding out a truth as I did with this when I left that experience, you know. So there's not a lot of people that are super fascinated with it, but the ones that are really fascinated with it, if that makes sense, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, you were fascinated with it. Wolf, you were talking about the other day, you're like, man, let's go find a place where we can all meet up, because you know why? That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been fascinated by it, and I've had my own experiences, so I know it's a real thing. But I've just always been fascinated by it. Everyone should be. Not even everybody knows about it, I guess.
The wolf. Bryce, you had an LBE. Have we talked about that? Have you had one yet, like a real one? I know you've had like entities show up and mess with you, but have you had like a full-fledged, while I'm watching myself sleep, out-of-body experience?
I had one where I fell out on the couch and turned around and saw myself, and then whoop, I was right back there where I started.
So you did for a moment.
That kind of thing. Yeah, for a moment. Then I had one when I was a teenager, for sure. I was out walking. I laid down on the couch and was at a different house and was walking around the dining room.
Well, listen, I think we're going to integrate this into the Halloween special. Remember, October 30th and 31st, we're going to be Halloweening up the radio station, Fringe FM, right? Tell your local radio stations to pick us up. Go to fringe.fm and hit us up. We want to make it like a tradition to where like as many people as possible listen to the station during Halloween night. Imagine some large radio tower overshadowing every town that celebrates Halloween, and we want to entertain the hell out of all of them every Halloween and get better and better each year. That's my dream and vision. It might turn out to be a complete wash, but at least as I'm saying it right now, that is my intention and desire. And I would like to integrate the out-of-body experience into that. Keep in mind, too, that a lot of the ghouls and ghosts and paranormal experiences that people may be having, according to Monroe, could just be astral travelers. A lot of people say, oh, it's haunted, it's dead. I don't know, though. The freaking graveyards and mental hospitals, those people are probably dead, though. You know, stuck in those places. But I think a lot of paranormal activity could be just OBE travelers. Perfectly sleeping sound in their beds, not dead, not trying to haunt anybody, just traveling around in their sleep. I know Bryce saw a shadow yesterday. Didn't you saw something move? It wigged you out. Takes a lot to jump scare you, buddy.
Dude, I thought it was a dog or the cat or something in my room, and I walked in there. There was nothing there. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it was that clear.
Were you eating or doing anything, like eating or drinking? Because according to Monroe, it might be another person going, hey, what's this guy doing? I want to do what he's doing, trying to piggyback off of you.
Yeah, no, I wasn't doing anything. I was just coming downstairs in my room.
We love you guys, man. We're going to get out of here, though. We'll be back next week. Probably might broadcast live on the station. You never know. This weekend, as we'll be updating and uploading new stuff into the station, trying to work in new things, new ideas. If you've got ideas or want to participate or help at all with the radio station, and I do mean help, like be a part of it, you can always email thefringefm at gmail. It's thefringefm at gmail.com, or call the station at 501-777-5631. This place belongs to all of us. It does not belong to one man or a set of men. It belongs to all of us, men and women. And remember, don't get mad at what Robert Monroe said, or actually get mad at what he said if you're mad at something he said. I'm only stating what he is saying. I didn't totally agree with everything. These are not my opinions or whatever you want to call it, right? Especially like the sexual stuff. I didn't even know he was dropping F-bombs. That's a totally new one on me. And I've read the book 1,000 times, and I just forgot about that one, I guess. All right. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something before we get out of here. I hate that freaking feeling. Because by the time you're gone, then you realize, you remember what it is every single time. All right, I'll remember it later. It is October the 3rd, 2025. We're out for tonight. We'll see you next broadcast. Keep it tuned in live on the Fringe FM. Love you guys. Night. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Sweet dreams.
Tombstones climbing up the sky to claim the boredom and the whine of the radiator, to freeze the fates that intertwine, unresolved and undefined in this echo chamber. You've given up the ghost. Just like Lazarus, you'll know there's an operator, some strange passenger inside. To that strange power I'm resigned like an iron anchor.